So, guys, welcome to Escape Velocity. This is a podcast dedicated to your financial independence. We bring people on here who are walking the talk, people who have a plan for their financial independence and they are working it out. So, today we have a wonderful guest. Funny story how I met with Dr. George. So I recently went to a real estate event in Dallas, Texas, and obviously I was networking with individuals. And so I went on Facebook. I was adding everybody from the real estate event on my friend list, and then I came across Dr. George's Facebook profile. It happened that he is a mutual friend to a whole lot of people that I was trying to add on my Facebook. So he has an Igbo name. I was like, okay, I need to connect with him. So he was gracious enough to schedule a call with me. And we've been talking since then, and I've learned so much, And from him, I met Dr. Bayo, and they added me to their WhatsApp group, and it has been tons and tons of great information and growth for me just being around these individuals. So thank you, Dr. Judge, for availing your time today to talk to my audience about your journey in financial independence. So I'm going to give you some time to introduce yourself to my audience so we could get this podcast kicked off. Over to you, Dr. Judge.
As John said, I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I'm based out of Houston, and I've been practicing since 2014. I actually started my medical career with the University of Texas. I was assistant professor there, working in one of the North Houston suburbs and communities. And I thought I was going to actually be on that academic route that whole time, just employed, tied to a main university. So I did that for about 7 years. But within the first 3 to 4 years, I started realizing that there is a whole corporate side of medicine that, I just was not aware of when I was in training. And it was a lot of limitations, a lot of friction that I was starting to experience, not only for myself as a physician, but also for my patients. I was noticing there was just a lot of barriers to just being a doctor that I thought I would be. So I started thinking I need alternate streams of income. I need some ways to just free up myself from having only this one source of income in the case that I ever wanted to do something else, do something different, start my own practice, or have better leverage when negotiating what type of, employed, experience that I want. So started, with, my curious mind looking at all types of investment opportunities from venture capital to stocks to real estate, and did my homework and just really felt that the best option, the most stable, least volatile, most predictable, most tried and true had been in real estate. And so I started going down that journey, looking into developing a single family home portfolio, realizing quickly that I would need to essentially have a second job if I wanted to be a landlord for 10, 15, 20 different single family homes. So being a busy surgeon, that kind of was not a great option. So kept looking, and then finally found the economies of scale with syndications, like multifamily syndications, and dived into that in 2018, made my first multifamily investment as an LP. I did a year's worth of research before I joined any particular operator, and that started my journey. After that, I've done 25 of them since then as an LP, and then 3 of them as a co-GP, which means that now I'm also on the sponsor team, helping in many different ways, mostly with raising capital, doing investor relations duties, communicating with other LPs, particularly physicians, who I now, try to bring into these investments because I think they're feeling the same frictions that I'm feeling. It's a very common trend, a common thread amongst us all, just a lot of headwinds that we face with trying to be doctors. So I think a lot of us are looking for different alternate streams. And that's what led me to start my syndication company. So I do that now in addition to running my own practice. And as we mentioned earlier before we went live, I'm also traveling and doing locums work.
Right.
So it's opened up these doors for me to do other things with my practice as opposed to what I had originally set out to do working with a university. And I'm much more happier with with this process and this path. It feels much more free. It feels a lot more autonomous and self-guided, you know, and it feels like the right thing to do and a lot more interesting. My day to day is not like the same thing over and over. It's different every day, and it's been a big source of satisfaction for my career and my personal life as well.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. I mean, from what I heard you say, you had to diversify at some point in time, right? I mean, the income from being a doctor is great, but you have to diversify.
Yes.
What actually inspired that move? Were you afraid of depending on one income stream?
Absolutely. When I started realizing that physicians are just not viewed the same way as they probably had been when we first started, as far as like just job security and, having, a high income, very high job satisfaction, started noticing every year there was reimbursement cuts, right? And those reimbursement cuts affect these big hospital systems or big hospital groups or even big private practice groups. Those reimbursements cause this financial strain that could impact the entire machine that's creating this healthcare, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that will trickle down to individual people who are within that system. There's people that still make up these systems. So if it gets to the point where the financial strain is high enough, then yes, sure enough, you will see, physicians, their jobs are not secure as they once were, say 30, 40 years ago, right? So I saw that writing on the wall. I was like, you know, I'm still kind of just a corporate worker. I'm still just a corporate employee. And, at any point in time, the administration in my group can tell me, look, we don't need you anymore. We can't, you
Mm-hmm.
know, uh, support you anymore or pay for you anymore. Like, and it may be independent of how hard you work, how well you've done, how many patients you've helped. And so that was one of the big reasons. But the other reasons, like I mentioned before, I noticed that the pay was going down overall
Mm-hmm.
and the reimbursements. So you had to work harder. You know what I mean? And I didn't love that. I liked working smart. I didn't think working harder and seeing more patients was necessarily beneficial
Mm-hmm.
to patients. So I wanted to free up I wanted to become financially free in order so I can be a better physician, not have to see 40 or 50 patients all at once, in one day. So many reasons why I felt like it made sense to have alternate streams of income. So
Well, that's great. That's great. What impact do you think that your background, I mean, coming from Nigeria, Nigerian origin, what impact do you think your background played in your number one desire to be a medical doctor and number two your desire for financial independence?
absolutely, it was a huge influence because in the Nigerian culture, just education in general is a big thing. And then particularly medical education, being a physician, being, some kind of healthcare provider is also a very big thing. There's just a lot of Nigerians in the community. My parents are healthcare providers. My dad's internal medicine. My mother's a family nurse practitioner. My older cousin, who's like my brother and mentor, he's a radiologist, an interventional radiologist. So that influence was absolutely there from the very beginning, and that focus on hard work and discipline and achievement and financial stability. That's all coming from my family upbringing for sure. It comes from the culture.
That's great. I was reading your the introduction your peer sent to me. It said that you've invested over like 1.4 million in different asset classes here and there. So, and I know that Rich Dad Poor Dad had come out with the cash flow quadrant. So the E, the I, the B, and the S, right? So how is your money distributed? How is your portfolio distributed? I know you've mentioned real estate, and I know you are also in other asset classes. How is your portfolio distributed in all these asset classes?
Yeah, I like that question because it kind of shows, it helps me talk about my evolution because I started in real estate, but now I've kind of broadened to say I'm in all real assets.
Mm-hmm.
As I learned more about kind of different ways of investing, it became apparent that anything that's a real asset is actually what I'm interested in. Things that people will always need. Housing is one of them. Therefore, real estate will always be in the portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
But I've also realized that investing in energy, oil and gas, is also important because people will always need that. Investing in food, in agriculture, and farmland, always going to be needed, right? Investing in medical, people are always going to need medical. So I've invested in medical office buildings. So it's expanded into more than just real estate. I call it real asset investing.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's tangible, that is hard to manipulate, and you can't print it. It's real, and that in my mind makes it more valuable. So yeah, my portfolio is distributed across of all of those things. The majority of it's still real estate. I'd probably say, 80% is multifamily, either development or value add.
Mm-hmm.
I would say 80, 85%, and then the rest of the 15 is evenly split amongst agriculture. So I'm invested in farmland and citrus farms. I'm invested in mineral rights, which is a play off of oil and gas. I'm invested in medical office building. That was actually my first real estate investment, was into a surgery center.
Okay.
Uh, and so I think these are just, great real assets. And I'm even looking at more. Now I'm opening my mind and my eyes to things like self-storage and working interest oil and gas,
Mm-hmm.
senior living, and even small businesses that produce things that people need on a daily basis. I'm opening up my eyes to those because those are also real assets as well.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the cash flow quadrants, that's one of my favorite books. I recommend it for everybody. Rich Dad Poor Dad is probably the famous book, but I
Mm-hmm.
even think Cash Flow Quadrants, his second book, is an even better book.
Yeah.
And I consider myself a little bit of all of them at this point. I started off pure employee in the upper left quadrant because I didn't know anything else, right? But now I own my own practice that puts me solidly in the S quadrant. But even before I was able to break away and start my own practice, I started being an LP, like I mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
and that puts me in the I quadrant. Where I'm just leveraging other people's talents and other people's skills and their time, and I'm just coming in with the capital. So I consider myself part of all of them. The B quadrant, I'm hoping to evolve into and graduate into as my
Yeah.
business mature, as my private practice matures. I want to create it such that it's a big business. Right now, it's just me and my VA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with my syndication company. It's just us. And so, but over time, I'm looking to grow it, adding on partners, networking and meeting other people. Like I've met Dr. Bio, who's on the call right now, and we're trying to collaborate. You and I have tried to collaborate. So eventually growing it to that big business. I feel like you can play in almost all of those quadrants.
Mm-hmm.
It's just where do you concentrate your most of your time with. And for me, in the end, I want to obviously concentrate my most of my time where it's the most efficient, which is the I quadrant. I always want to be an I quadrant, whether I'm an S or a B. I'll probably never go back to being an E, but I'll always play in all the other three quadrants, and the goal is to be as much of an I quadrant as possible.
That's great. That's great. I mean, looking at where you are right now, a lot of people would definitely want to have like just a little percentage of where you are right now. So for individuals here on the call that would definitely want to start diagnosing their financial health, figuring out what asset classes to push their money into, perhaps a whole lot of individuals here might not be up to that level of making above like 100K like in a year. What practical steps would you recommend that they start taking now until that higher cash flow starts coming in, or that higher income starts coming in, or that better job starts coming in? What are some practical steps that they can start taking now in order to prepare for that state?
Yeah, I love answering this one too because I always tell people when you start, and when I started, the two things that really helped me the most was being very curious, meaning I sought out information from wherever I could get it, and I sought it out from the best places that helped me learn my highest learning absorption style. So I went through podcasts, I went through YouTube channels, real books, audiobooks, and just started learning and learning the language, learning the concepts, learning what's out there because when you do start, you're really just not aware of what's possible. And that's the best way to actually figure out where you want to be and how you want to get there. You have to first understand what's out there. And so be very, very curious. Set up your life, your career, your as much as possible. Set up your circumstances such that you can free up time in order to devote and prioritize sitting down and learning these concepts. So if you're working a very hard long job, where and when can you carve out some time to just put on a podcast? You
Mm-hmm.
know, that way you start that learning process. So I think that's the one thing. The second thing is be very, very social. And that means going out and actually meeting people in the space, networking with them, having conversations, asking them questions and letting them ask you questions so that you can answer them and start kind of going through that routine of saying what you want and what you're looking for. It is a team sport. No
Mm-hmm.
matter, even if you're a solo investor, you still have to rely on different stakeholders. So you have to go out there and meet them. You have to meet the lenders, the brokers, the property managers. Um, so that was one of the other big things that helped me. I started going to different meetups, conferences, even in state, out of country. Again, creating time around my busy schedule because I was still employed back then. But I would just figure out a creative ways to get to those meetings. You mentioned that you're at a meeting this weekend, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you're doing this podcast, you still had to carve around time to get to that meeting,
Yeah.
go meet people. It's super important. And then we have the powerful tools of the internet that allow us to meet even more people at a bigger scale
Mm-hmm.
in more efficient ways. So
Right.
do those two things, and that's the best way to start getting yourself ready to not only figuring out what you want, but actually getting the confidence to make your first investment.
That's great.
Um,
That's
yeah,
great.
so those two things.
That's great. I would definitely echo that. Because before I became like a United States citizen, you know, with no papers and no like solid income coming in, I had to really invest in myself, right? I was going to all those conferences just like Dr. Bayo, sorry, Dr. Judge said. So I was definitely invested in myself, investing in my education. And then when the right income producing job now came in, I was now empowered to put into practice everything I've been learning over the years. So that's a great word. So, Dr. Judge, what is financial independence and what does that mean to you?
So for me, it means replacing or matching my career, my job, my physician salary with purely passive streams of income. Meaning, I'm literally whether I'm sleeping, waking, like the income is coming in,
Right.
and once I've matched my physician salary, then that to me is financial freedom. But it can mean many different things for other people. Another really common way to define it is by looking at what your desired level of just daily monthly expenses are and seeing if you can match that with passive income. Doesn't necessarily have to be the salary of the job that you make, but it can just mean how much you expect to spend, in a month. Can you match that in passive income streams? For me in particular, it means matching my physician salary.
That's great. That's great. And if you were, let me just ask this question. If you were to start your journey all over again, like, they gave you like a clean slate to start your journey all over again, but with the knowledge that you have right now, what are some of the things that you are going to do different in your path and in your journey to financial independence?
I would honestly, in within medical school, probably college, medical school, and residency, I would have devoted more time to doing the networking and the learning, that be curious and be social part. I know it would have been hard because residency is a very tough thing, time wise, and medical school, same. It can be very tough to not just do that all day every day. But I would have started that process early, even if I didn't have money. I was incurring debt back then. you know,
Mm.
my balance sheet was getting worse by the day. But still, even if I didn't have money to invest back then, I would have gone to meetups. That we didn't have Zoom back then. We did have Skype, but nobody was using it. But
Yeah.
I would have gone to events like this as much as possible.
Mm.
I would have read right next to my anatomy books. I would have been reading some financial books,
Mm.
even a little bit. I think that would have, even set me up on a more accelerated course. Uh, Once I got to the point where I'm actually making a physician's salary. I would have probably invested my very first check. I probably would have invested into something. But
Yeah.
it took. I started, like I said, 2014, but my first multifamily investment was 2018. Now think about that impact. If I had started multifamily investing in 2015, that would have been,
Yeah.
exponentially different,
Right.
right? That was like the peak of the bull run for multifamily. But I would have been prepared for that. You know what I mean? I
Hmm.
would have already had a strict strategy from the moment I got out and got that first check versus just putting it in the bank.
That's great. That's great. I like hearing that. So I want to go over to some of the habits that you've cultivated over the years, right? So the idea that most W2 income, when you think about time versus money, right? We have to put in a lot of time, right? So that we can make so amount of money, right? But we are trying to move our mindset to the ease and the eyes that use other people's time and other people's money to invest in all these real assets, right? So I just want to know, what are some of the habits that you started practicing that acted as enablers for you to transition your mindsets from the E's and I's to the from the E's and S to the B's and I? What are some of the habits that helped you to cultivate, invest, and now exponentially grow your money?
Yeah, I think that doing some personal things really helped me. Like, and these are things that revolve around discipline or delayed gratification. In my mind, I think that's helped me a lot with my entrepreneurial endeavors, and that's so I started doing intermittent fasting. Um, I started doing like workout routines and trying to stick with it, be consistent with it.
Mm-hmm.
I even, started cutting out, things like TV time. At one point I just even didn't have a TV in my house,
Mm.
you know, and just really started being kind of disciplined with my time, with my energy, with my focus, with my bandwidth. I think that really helped with your mindset when you kind of have a will to do something and it's not necessarily that easy.
Right.
It's something that will challenge your commitment. I think that translates very well into the entrepreneurial and investor, um, pathway because that's what it takes. Honestly, it takes just trying something, struggling through it, maybe failing, but coming back to it and trying it again until you get the results. That's the entrepreneurial pathway. That's investing. Investing's not always going to be hitting home runs. It's not going to always be getting wins. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
take some losses. Can you come back from that? Do you have the mindset to just endure, right? And so doing those things really helped me. One thing recently I've still not good at, but cold showers. Apparently, that's like a thing that a lot of entrepreneurs do, and it is a struggle. But once you do it, you overcome it. You feel really good for the rest of the day. You feel like, all right, I conquered that at 6 a.m. What else? Like, let's go.
How does cold shower help? Like, how does it help?
it's a res- it's actually medically there's some medical reasons why it helps, but on the mental question part you asked,
Mm-hmm.
it's you're resistant to something, right?
Mm,
Sounds like that's something you'd be very resistant to, but then your mind overcomes that resistance.
mm,
And so this mindset of overcoming resistance is huge in being an entrepreneur. Overcoming just hurdles, and getting past it and conquering them.
mm,
Same thing with investing. I think, you need that mindset to push through challenges, right? Whether that's
mm.
a roadblock of how to invest and where to invest, um, you know, that intimidation, that fear of the unknown, you push through it.
That's great. That's great. So, I'm gonna go back to a question, something you said about your history here, real quick. But to echo some of the things that you've said, so from the time you plant a seed to the time you make a harvest, there's always that period that you have to water the seed, allow it to grow into a tree, and then you can go pluck the fruits whenever they germinate, right? So I think that's what Dr. George is trying to help us understand here, that it's going to be a journey. It's going to be a journey to your financial independence, and you have to make sure that the seed is surrounded by the environment that enables it to grow, right? So, but I wanted to go back to your history. You said something that, from the time I think there was a two-year gap from the time you started learning about apartment investing and other asset classes, um, that it took you like about 2 years to actually start taking steps and moves. What were you doing within those 2 years?
During that time frame, I was just taking in as much content as I can, and going to network and talk with people and ask questions. My physician brain doesn't want me to take risks, and so I needed to. That was my pathway that I had to at least get to in order to feel like I could take that risk. I got to a point where, I said I wasn't 100% ready, but I was 80, based on the work that I did. And I felt that was enough. If I'm 80% and I make this investment now, it could go good or it could go bad, but I won't be financially ruined because of it. And I always invested the smallest amount possible to test out the actual opportunity and the syndicator. So that's what it looked like. It looked like me just, you know, taking in as much content as possible, you know. Um, and I think it helped. I think it helped me a lot. I
Mm-hmm.
think it helped me learn the language. That's a lot of what I was doing because it was like medicine. It reminded me of medical school. When I first got to medical school, it felt like I had to learn a new language, the language of medicine and anatomy and physiology. It was the same thing. It was like all these terms and concepts and equations. I just had to sit down and learn them first.
Mm-hmm.
And then, from there I went on and made that investment.
That's great. That's great. So we are going to be opening up the section for question and answer. So if you have any questions for Dr. George, just let me know in the comment section. I'm going to unmute you to ask your question, and if you feel comfortable typing it up, go ahead and do that. But I wanted to ask you, Dr. George, how do you see this market right now, this real estate market, and how are you navigating it?
It's a very challenging market over the last year or two. I think the opportunities, I think these things are now, it's clear these things are in cycles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now we're probably at a time where we're past that major challenging point and we're going to transition into potential opportunity because of a lot of malinvestment that had been made over the last 2 years that
Mm-hmm.
creates probably some fallout, some foreclosures, some, disinflation, some deflation, I should say. And, valuations of properties are gonna, correct, but that means there's opportunity. So, um, particularly, there's going to be challenges, and there are already challenges with credit markets. So getting loans are going to be harder, but that also creates an opportunity for private capital. And that's what this money on the sideline has been, talked about over the last few years. That's private capital
Mm-hmm.
loading up and waiting for the credit markets to break to the point where people will be seeking out private sources of debt, private sources of equity, you know, and that's where groups and communities come into play. Like
Right.
I'm excited about the fact that, you're growing a community. I've been growing a community. Bio's on the line here. He's been growing a community because when those communities come together, this just shows the reason that networking and getting out there is so important because now you can band together, pool capital, and go after these once in a lifetime opportunities.
That's great. What do you think is the psychology of buyers and sellers currently right now in the market?
It depends. It depends on whether folks are experienced or not. The ones who are experienced are, as far as buyers, they're very, very happy right now. They're very optimistic right now
Mm-hmm.
because they know this is a buying opportunity. Whereas the buyers who are really in the game the last 3 or 4 years, they're probably, if they're newer, they may be more pessimistic because they got the bad taste in their mouth and maybe they're backing away from the space completely,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't think is the right thing to do. Maybe for them it's the right thing, but if they're just inexperienced, then they're probably checking out of the game when this is actually the time to check in and lean in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Experienced sellers, they probably know, that this is the time that it's going to be a buyer's market. So they probably need to game plan for that, figure out how to hold their properties as long as possible until it becomes a seller's market again.
Mm-hmm.
Inexperienced sellers are, they're going to struggle. They're going to be facing a lot of, just, headwinds for making their debt service and keeping their property and keeping operations. And the good ones, the good property owners, which are potential sellers, they know how to weather the storm,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so it probably depends mostly on your experience levels.
What advice would you give to someone who is like a limited partner right now, but it's looking at the market and truly, truly scared with what is going on? What advice would you give to such an individual?
I say lean on people who have gone through these cycles. You
Mm-hmm.
have to lean into those ones. Find those operators or sources of knowledge who have gone through ups and downs because they're going to be the best way to navigate your outlook, your emotions going through this kind of turbulent transition. So, and that again goes back to my networking point. You want
Mm-hmm.
to know who they are, you want to be able to get their ear, sit down, have conversations with them, chat with them, pick their brain. And you do that by networking. So, yep, lean on and learn history, like go back and look at the history. Look what happened in 2008, 2001, 1987, you know, learn from the past. It's not a crystal ball, but it's definitely more beneficial to use that knowledge versus not knowing it at all, right? So lean on history.
Where can someone find where can someone find this community of investors? Several years ago, I was in that boat where I wanted to do a lot of real estate, right? But I didn't know where I can find like community of investors to start sharpening my mind with. How did you find your own community, and what advice do you give to individuals who are looking for that community of investors?
First, I say keep an open mind. Keep the mindset that it's more available now than ever before. Just that's a fact. With social media, internet, being able to find a tribe of people, like-minded community, is easier now than it ever has been. You can start by going to different ones and kind of getting a feel. That's what I did. Like went to different meetups, and these meetups usually had bigger groups that you can participate in, bigger mentoring clubs or masterminds. Check them out, sample them, don't jump. I didn't jump either until I found my right tribe. And then I went with them. They're based out of Dallas as well. But even still, I'm still part of many other kind of masterminds that are easy to access. I mean, they're literally Facebook groups or WhatsApp groups where conversations are being had, right? And where there's, connections to these who I call like mentors, the folks who have gone through many cycles, and you start getting closer and closer to those circles. So I think it's just a matter of making the effort to go to events like this, connect with people, reach out on LinkedIn, and start having conversations and asking questions, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, it's there.
Someone once said that it's always easier to open a door from the inside than to open it from the outside, right? So like someone on the inside, it's
Yeah.
gonna be easier for the person to bring you in, open the door from the inside. And so the person is coming with wealth of experience. So just like, Dr. George said, coming to events like this, I know at some point in time I had to download an app called meetup.com. Basically what I was looking for was just real estate investing, right? I was going to networking, and when I heard about the idea of apartment investing, I was like, this is where I need to be. And I've been running with that vision since then. In December, I was at Grant Cardon's event. I was learning as much as possible, meeting people. I was telling Dr. George that I was at Brad Sombrock's Wealth to Retire, which he was just teaching about real estate underwriting this weekend, and obviously going back there tomorrow. So you have to surround yourself, find the community, find, just like he said, find your tribe, right? But I have one question, one important question. So, in relation to finding your tribe, there are several school of thoughts out there about what apartment methodology individuals should follow. Some people teach their students or their mentees to hold apartment investment for 3 to 5 years. Some people are focusing on 10 years. Some people are focusing on infinite returns. So hold the property as long as possible, refinance, and then keep holding it, right? So as you were opening your mind to all of this school of thoughts, how did you know that this particular tribe or this particular philosophy fits very well with you?
Yeah. I actually based my decision on the underlying goals, the whys of why this particular investing mastermind did any kind of investing at all. And it's because they really focused on freedom, like personal autonomy and sovereignty. They focused on things, concepts around kind of what's just and what's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's what led me, that's what connected me. Because everyone can talk about underwriting,
Yeah.
everyone can talk about, asset classes and different things like that.
All
But
right.
this particular group was very, very freedom minded. And that's what drew me into them. And so that is actually what opened my eyes to more than just real estate,
Okay.
more than just a specific asset class or a specific investment strategy. It opened my mind up to all real assets because you can use any real asset to combat paper assets, which is kind of the source of a lot of challenging, headwinds for against freedom and autonomy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yes, specifically, you can follow folks who kind of state the argument for holding a property long term and just refinancing, and
Okay.
that's particularly my strategy. I prefer that, but it's specific to me. I have a profession where I can get cash flow from trading time for money,
Mm-hmm.
and so I can focus more on longer term holds where I'm just able to refi out, hold the property, and grow my portfolio. Whereas other other operators, other individuals may be relying on the actual returns, the capital gains to make the actual wealth build. And so they need more transaction. And I understand that. Not that I necessarily agree with it, but I get it. Like if that's going to be a big source of your income and your wealth building process is actually getting to the 3 to 5 year point, selling and getting that big upsale, that upside,
Mm-hmm.
then it makes sense that that would be your strategy, um, and that's where a lot of your capital is coming from. Some operators, that's it, that's all. They don't make the money during the acquisition or the asset management. They're going to get paid. They're at the bottom of the capital stack, meaning they get paid once they sell the asset, and so that upside may be bigger for them
Yeah.
if they just sell it and go on to the next project versus refi it and strip the equity.
Mm.
So totally reasonable thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not my particular strategy, just because my position and the way I'm set up as far as my career, my profession,
Yeah.
I'm able to think about long-term holds more.
Yeah, that's great. Quick question about something came to my mind about debt. We are in a crisis right now in apartment investing and just the financial market generally, right? What are some of your beliefs or about fixed debt and bridge loans?
Yeah, and this is, something that I've been kind of learning about because um, I think I, you know, didn't have a full understanding of it. In my mind, um, I can understand why bridge debt had to be used over the last 2 to 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And when you really look back at it, probably the most experienced operators just stopped doing deals because they were not able to get those deals at number one, a good valuation. So they clearly saw it was overpriced. And
Mm-hmm.
number two, they weren't able to get fixed debt.
Mm,
You just weren't in the competition if you tried to win deals with fixed debt.
mm,
So and it's a macroeconomic effect that led to that, to the fact that only variable rate debt was able to win deals over the last 2 to 3 years. Not
mm,
in every case, but in the majority of cases.
yeah.
Um, and so I'm not against variable rate debt. I think they both have purposes depending on the cycle. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway
Mm,
is you can't just go with one strategy
mm,
for every part of the cycle. You actually have to understand pros and cons of both and when to apply both. Some would argue right now is probably potentially a good time to start using variable rate debt because we may be in a falling interest rate environment where you can refi out easier without having prepayment penalties that you would see on a fixed debt, product, and that'll allow you to ride the wave,
mm.
the interest as the interest rates get cut. So getting into properties now, I can understand somebody saying, "Look, variable rate is what you want right now,"
Mm.
versus a few years ago, yeah, fixed rate is what you wanted because you wanted to lock in those low interest rates before the Federal Reserve started raising rates. So
That's very interesting. So, want to remind everyone that you can ask Dr. George any question that you have. I'm going to go to kind of your personal development journey. I see you have a ton of information to share. Your language shows that you are very adept in this real asset game, but I wanted to know how you are balancing your life, how you are balancing yourself. I've heard that you are in so many LP deals and so many GP deals, and then you are working as an orthopedic surgeon, right? How
yes,
are you
still
balancing all these endeavors?
honestly, I think it's the mindset where it starts. Having ways to kind of get clear on your why, because that will motivate you through the headwinds and the multitasking and organizational challenges. If your purpose is really strong, you will at least push through it. But yes, I agree. You still have to kind of be smart about things and be organized about things. So again, doing things where I lean on other other professionals to help. So I'm looking at VAs, um, CPAs to help me with the personal balance sheet, right? Looking at partners to kind of help with some of the outreach and branding work. I think that's huge. Getting help, not trying to do it all by yourself. I'm still looking for mentors, really strong mentors to help me.
Hmm.
I have an executive coach that actually helps me. I talk with them every week
Wow.
and just that helps me just kind of get clarity and get grounded to kind of keep pushing forward.
Hmm.
Tapping into these professional ways of getting help, I think really helps a lot. Got to get organized, and that's still a journey for me. Making sure my household is organized, my internal household is organized. I'm
Yeah.
healthy, I'm strong,
Right.
I'm not, sick. I'm not tired. My energy levels are high.
Mm-hmm.
So eating the right foods, you know, taking consuming the right things on social media or on regular media, that all just, you just have to clean all of that up so you can just have a strong will, strong mind, strong body.
Mm-hmm.
uh, so yeah, this all of that counts, all of it. So,
No, that's great. I think when you said consuming good things on social media, I kind of cracked up because that has been a personal journey for me too, right? Literally had to unfollow like about 300 to 400 accounts on my Instagram.
absolutely.
It was just
Same.
like purposeless. I don't know why I was following those individuals.
Right. Same. And
Yeah,
there's a lot. We're at a time where we can get flooded with just so much negativity out there, right?
right.
So much either negativity or just unuseful things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you just got to protect that.
Right. So, I mean, I've heard, keeping tabs with your mentors, you're obviously going to different meetups and paying for access to these individuals. How else do you stay motivated to pursue your goal for financial independence? What other stuff do you do to be one with your vision over and over again?
Hmm. Additional things that I do. I think I think stepping out of my comfort zone and trying to put myself out there
Okay.
is it's almost in a way kind of elevating you to stay motivated. You know, putting content on social media or doing a webinar, doing calls like this, actually organizing them yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It was a point in time where I was hosting in-person investor mentoring club meetups in Houston. You know,
Mm-hmm.
going out giving talks. I think that helps one stay motivated. Because there's this kind of, I guess, like a reward that you get. You feel good after you've at least tried. It may not have gone well. Hell, I've run some meetings where no one shows up, but
Mm-hmm.
but it's still weird. It's still
Yeah.
weird because I still feel good that I at least tried.
Right.
And, the next one is still going to be good.
Right.
I'm still optimistic, and it's a weird way, but I think by actively trying to create community is a good way to stay motivated. You know.
No, that's great for sure. So on your personal development, how do you develop yourself? How many audiobooks do you listen to in a month? How many books do you read? What is your own personal development journey looks like?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I think the mindset part of it probably comes first before even doing all the curiosity and networking. You just got to change your mindset. And I think reading and coming across mindset content has been huge for me. I'm probably reading 2 to 3 books that either have mindset woven into it or just purely about mindset. I love those books, especially when they put them in the context of being entrepreneurial and running businesses. Um, like I said, this executive coach is the new thing for me over the last year. That helps as well. I think of it as like when I was in med school, I had mentors to help me learn orthopedics. Professional athletes have coaches that help them. At one time I was very into just going to the gym, and I got my best results when I hired a trainer who was a coach, right? And so I'm like, man, let me get someone to help me, like, coach me as I go through this entrepreneurial journey. And that's been huge. So investing in that, I think is things like that. I think are very, very important. And for sure, you're going to come across different books and things to read. And I would even say to that, finding out your learning style is very important, because for me, it's actually more audio and visual content. So I would do the audiobook instead of the actual real book itself. And that allowed me to absorb it better. So that's just a little add, added value for that answer.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think I'm gonna really echo what you just said. When I was like 20, in my early 20s, right? So reading a physical book was something I I derive pleasure in doing. But right now, I just cannot read. I can't even remember the last time I finished like a physical book, you
Mhm.
know. So, and audiobooks are the thing for me right now. So, and I got a premium subscription with Spotify, and they give you 15 hours of audio, any audiobook you want to listen to, as long as it's in their catalog, right? You can have 15 hours of audiobooks section every month, you know. And
Oh
then
wow.
yeah, so I don't buy Audible right now,
Oh,
because majority of my books are in Spotify, and I just pay like $15 per month for that, versus Audible, where you have to buy like each book pay one credit or do the subscription.
I
So
love it.
yeah, definitely echo with that, because audiobooks, they are super easy. I try to stick to two audiobooks per month, and
Mhm.
that is my own personal development plan. So
I
all
love
right, guys, we are at the hour here, but I still want to give someone an opportunity to ask a question. If not, we're going to round off this podcast session. I want to ask Dr. George, how do people connect with you? Sorry,
yes.
before you answer that, what are some, maybe one or two audiobooks that you've listened to that you can recommend that our audience should go check out? And then how do
Yes.
people connect with you?
Yes, absolutely. I always recommend Cash Flow Quadrants. And then I also recommend Tax Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright, who's actually the CPA for Robert Kiyosaki. I think those are two excellent, great sources for beginners to kind of understand these concepts. Recently, I've read this book, E Myth. It's really good for entrepreneurs trying to start businesses, trying to kind of get that entrepreneurial mindset. Um, as far as reaching out to me, I think the easiest place to reach out to me is on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. Website is timehealthcapital.com. So you can reach me by email at george@timehealthcapital.com. And I'll leave that in the chat.
Yeah, that's great. So cash flow
Yeah.
quadrants, recommend that.
Yep.
Tax free
And tax
wealth.
free wealth. Yeah. TAX. I think that was one of the most impactful books. Probably the most impactful book I've ever read, because taxes are the number one expenses in the majority of people's lives over their lifetime. You're not going to pay more than anything else than you are going to pay in taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding that and how to mitigate that, how to decrease that down to as close to zero as possible in a legal, ethical way, I think is very worthwhile. You know,
That's great. That's great. Wow, it's been a lot of information explosion here. So I'm really happy that you were able to make our time to come talk to my audience today.
yep.
Before we call it a day today, any final words to our listeners today?
I gotta go back and echo. I love it. It's on my website. Be curious and be social. It's just tried and true.
Mm-hmm.
Get out. It's that comfort zone. Getting out of that comfort zone, it will open up some doors for you. It'll open up so many doors. Like the abundance is out there. We just got to be curious and be social.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. George. I appreciate your time today. And thank you to everyone who made out their time to be on this podcast today. We're going to be releasing the audio version and the video, so stay tuned. But we want to thank you, Dr. George, and praying for the best for you as you travel and make the money and invest the money,
Yep.
that
Good
everything
journey
keeps going well. Thank you
for
very
sure.
much.
Likewise.
All
Great
right, sir.
job with the podcast.
Thank you,
Love to
sir.
see it.
Thank you, sir.